In this video, Avery Smith is going to walk you through the key differences between data analysts and data scientists and help you figure out which is the better career path for you. He'll talk about the key differences between the roles, who tends to excel in each one, and what characteristics you should have if you want to be successful. And he'll share his best advice for the things that you should focus on if you want to build a great career in either of those fields. It's a great video. I think you're really going to love it. Please let us know what you think in the comments. Let's get into kind of the main topic. So if folks here are not totally sure where they want to go, data analyst or data scientist, what might you want to tell them? Like, how different are these roles? How much overlap is it? And could you just kind of walk us through some of the key differences?
When I think about like what's the difference between a data analyst and a data scientist, the easiest way for me to think about it is what way you're facing with respect to time a lot of the time. Now, this isn't 100% the case, but for me, it's like the easiest differentiator. So data analyst is going to be looking backwards with time and talk about what has happened. That's descriptive analytics. You're describing what has happened. And a data scientist is going to be more front facing and talking about what's going to happen in the future. And that would be predictive analytics. Now, it's not exactly that clear cut and simple, but I find that having that differentiator makes it easier for other people to think about. Of course, there's going to be overlap in some of the tools you're using. Sometimes data scientists are only going to be doing descriptive analytics and looking in the past. So it's not quite that, but I think that's the easiest like filter to kind of think through that.
Yeah, that's awesome. How do you think there's certain people that are better suited for one path or another? And like, how would somebody figure that out? Like which one's better for them potentially?
Well, I have a unique perspective on this, I think, because I've done both. And then I've also tried to help people become both. And I have this thought now that I think everyone, when you're just getting started, I think it's becoming an analyst is a lot easier. One of the main reasons is because data scientists, they're going to be programming more, and programming, it's literally a language. It takes time to learn. And when you're maybe just starting off or you're pivoting from a different career, that programming can be like quite a bit of a stumbling block for a lot of people because it's not super hard, but it's also not super easy. It's somewhere in between. And as a data analyst, you just don't have to code nearly as much. So I think starting as an analyst is a lot easier. But that being said, if you already have a programming background, maybe you jump straight for the scientist role. Or if you have a math background, that's the other thing is data scientists, they use a little bit more complex math. The math for data, like a data analyst role, is actually, I think, incredibly simple. Like I think anyone can really do it. The math for a data scientist, that takes a little bit more math, a little bit more effort to learn, a little bit harder math. You start getting into like calculus and linear algebra become more important than it does for a data analyst. So if you maybe majored in math or you majored in computer science, I think going to the data scientist route could be a good option for you. But for everyone else, I personally just think it's easier to start as an analyst, get your foot in the door, start getting paid. And then the cool thing is a lot of the times you can actually like get paid to learn to program at work and then become a data scientist down the road. Yeah.
I love that advice. And I think you're totally right. I think the hurdle's probably lower. So like time to money, time to salary is the metric there. Try to reduce that as much as possible. It's awesome advice. How much, it's interesting. You said, so like once you're in the role as an analyst, you could get paid to learn to program. How much like overlap is there between the roles? Like, if you're an analyst, are you never doing data science work, or is it blurry sometimes? Like how much are they divided once you're inside a role?
It really depends. I mean, here's the funny thing about data titles is they kind of mean something different to every single company. Like sometimes you don't have certain, like for instance, when I was at ExxonMobil, I'm not 100% sure. I'm like 90% sure there was not one titled data engineer at the company. There was people doing data engineering work. But they didn't have the title data engineer. I've seen sometimes roles be called data science analyst. And it's like, okay, I'm not exactly sure what that is. So there's a lot of blurry lines between different titles and roles in the data world. But that being said, like a traditional data analyst, a lot of the times they're going to be spending their time using Excel, using Tableau, and using SQL. A data scientist probably spends more time in something like Python or R and SQL as well. Really, that SQL is probably the biggest overlapping tool between actually any data role. Like even data engineers are using SQL a lot. So I think that's probably like the biggest overlap. Data scientists probably aren't going to be using Excel a ton. I mean, I'm sure there's data scientists out there that are using Excel, but they're probably not, or sorry, data scientists that are using Excel, but that's not really usually the case. So there definitely is some tool overlap and thinking overlap. Like I said, sometimes, there'll be a data analyst and they'll be doing, time series forecasting, or maybe they'll even start getting into some machine learning, especially with like linear regression, like a basic linear regression model. And sometimes the data scientist, maybe isn't doing as much machine learning and they're doing, more data cleaning and data aggregation. And that stuff might be traditionally done more by a data analyst, but depending on company size and company culture, there's definitely overlaps, and it's unfortunately a fuzzy, blurry line.
Yeah. I agree. It's like, it's sometimes hard just from the title to tell what type of the work you're going to actually be doing. So you definitely have to drill into the description and talk to folks at the company to really understand it. There was another one that I worked at a big company, and the people that were doing what I would call data engineering, they called the business intelligence group, which I thought was like very confusing to me because I think of that as much more like an analytics group. But they were in charge of the data infrastructure and enabling tools for people. So it's like, titles are a mess. I think you're dead on there. If somebody, let's stick with the data analyst side then, because it sounds like that's the best path in. What are the things that somebody should focus on if they want to like get to that job as quickly as possible? What would you recommend they focus on learning?
This is something I'm really passionate about. I recently just created this like mnemonic because, when you're learning like math in grade school, right? There's the please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, which is like, okay, when you have a math equation, you do parentheses first and then the exponents, so on and so forth. And I'm like, man, we need this for data analysts. So the phrase is, let me think if I ready. Every turtle swims past, I think is what it is. So Excel, Tableau, SQL, and then Python later. I really don't think anyone who's trying to be a data analyst should start with Python. It's only listed on job requirements about 25% of all of data analyst jobs, including like intermediate and senior roles. And so it's like, and like I said, programming takes a long time to learn. So it's like, are you really going to delay landing your first data job by, let's say it takes you 6 months to feel comfortable with SQL to be able to apply to an extra 25% of the jobs? Personally, I don't really think that's worth it. So I think really focusing on data analysis with Excel, data wrangling with SQL, and then data visualization in Power BI or Tableau. I personally like Tableau because it's usually listed on about 10% more applications than Power BI. Plus, it's a lot easier to access and install, especially if you have a Mac. Which is quite difficult. So that's where I would start, is with the every turtle swimming, ETS, Excel, Tableau, SQL.
I love it. I was going to ask you why Tableau, not Power BI, and you answered it right there. Just a slight edge on job applications or job requirements. So that's fantastic. I agree with with your stack, like in the order to tackle it. I think it's perfect. I'm curious for folks in the audience, why start with Excel? Why is that the best place to start?
I think it's just like the lowest hanging fruit. Like my whole philosophy and what I talk about is like, how do you get your foot in the door as soon as possible? And instead of paying to learn, you get paid to learn. Because we talked about how like, these companies will pay you to upskill. And so I'm all about just like, let's just grab the lowest hanging fruit as fast as we can and get as many quick wins as we can. For me, Excel is the quickest win because most people have at least used it a little bit. So it's not very foreign to them. And it's actually really like not that complicated. For example, you can qualify, like there are some jobs where you'd be a data analyst and you'd only be using Excel. And a lot of the times it's kind of like you'd be using the basic Excel things like sorts and filters and formulas. And then you learn X lookup or V lookup, and then you add pivot tables and pivot charts, and like, boom, you're like qualified.
You're an analyst.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like it's just like most people are pretty comfortable in it already, and it doesn't take a whole lot of effort to get you to the point where you kind of need to be.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that's dead on advice. And it's like, I think Excel is the least intimidating to learn by far. Like it doesn't feel like you're learning a language. Yeah, with formulas and functions a little bit, but it's kind of like coding light, like it's a good entry point. And for me, I learned Excel first, and then when I pivoted and needed to learn SQL, knowing some of those concepts in Excel, like how do I relate two different sheets together with the VLOOKUP or an XLOOKUP, it's basically a join, and then so like you already kind of have those concepts. And for me, having Excel as a foundation made SQL easier. And I've seen that with a lot of people too. So yeah, I love your stack there. How about for the folks that are like, no, I don't want to do data analyst. Like data science sounds so fun for me. This is what I like. If they wanted to go straight in, what are the tools they should focus on? Like, what are the main skills?
Well, once again, like it really depends on different roles. So for example, this is going to sound crazy to people probably. But when I first became a data scientist, I didn't use SQL at all. Didn't use it at all. And that was because I was at a smaller company where we didn't really have a ton of databases. But then I moved to Exxon. Exxon had a ton of databases, so all of a sudden I had to use SQL. So like I definitely think SQL and Python are the two I would stick with, unless you're trying to go in a specific industry. R would come into play. I really like R and I really like Python. I like to tease that I don't like R just because I feel like it's really easy and fun to do. But I like R. I think it's actually kind of easier to learn than Python. I just think Python is a little bit more versatile and more in demand right now. But like, for example, there's some industries like pharmaceuticals or academia or even like sports analytics, especially baseball, where like R is king. And if you're trying to go into one of those industries, you might learn R. So some combination of SQL plus Python or R, and I guess you get to choose. My recommendation is Python, but they're all good.
Yeah. Awesome. Oh man, that's great. How about anything that you said like Python not first for being a data analyst. What are some other things that you see people focusing on that they get wrong? Like maybe they should skip. Is there anything that should be on that skip list?
I just think that people try to honestly learn a lot, which is obviously great. I'm not saying to learn, but just remember that like actually landing a job is the goal. And there's more to landing a job than just upskilling. So one of the things I talk about is it's my method for landing data jobs. It's called the SPN method. Skills for S, portfolio for P, and then network for N. And you actually need all three, and they're all three equally important. So I see a lot of people, focusing all on skills, maybe not building a portfolio or maybe not networking. And I think that leads to frustration because you feel like you're putting in the work, but you're not actually making any progress. So I wouldn't say necessarily to skip any skills that we've talked about, but maybe just remember for every skill that you have to be building a project or to be networking an equal amount, or at least a close amount of time. I would suggest 30, 30, 30 or 33, 33, 33 splits. But like, I think most people are probably like 95, 2.5. And just bringing that down a little bit, I think would be significant.
Yeah, so smart and so important to remind us, like data people tend to be a little more introverted. We're excited about the technical puzzle that we're solving. The networking is like a big, scary word. I'm curious for folks like that who are thinking, oh, I don't want to do networking, or like, that sounds intimidating to me. Any tips on networking effectively? Like, where would somebody get started if they have no clue what they're doing networking?
Well, I'm super biased because posting and commenting on LinkedIn has literally changed my life. And I wouldn't likely be talking to you if I had never started doing that. Like back in basically like 2020, I posted, specifically when COVID first came out, there was an initiative from the government to like, hey, a call to all data scientists. Here's like, I don't remember how many files it was. Here's like 40,000 articles on everything that like is related to COVID. Use data science and pull out some insights. And I, as a data scientist, I was like, this is awesome. I'm going to fight COVID with data. And I actually made a post about it on LinkedIn, and I tagged a bunch of LinkedIn people basically. And that post got 80,000 views. And I was like, what the heck? I can post on LinkedIn and people will see stuff. And that post, at the time I didn't have any connections probably. And, now 130,000 followers later, I have a very different life. So I'm really biased. I think posting on LinkedIn will change your life and help you land a job. But I understand that's a scary first step. A scary step, actually, whenever you take it, regardless of its first. So one of the easiest things that I think you can do that I don't think is scary, and I think introverts can do, is just reaching out, going through your phone contacts. I call this the phone book method. Literally just go through your phone, go through every single contact and just write down where that person works. Then answer a simple yes or no question. Would this company hire data analysts? Does this company hire data analysts? And for all the yeses, just send your friend a text and say, hey, I know you work for whatever company you work for. Do you enjoy working there? And that can just be like a super easy way to get the conversation going. And then the next question can be like, oh, do you know any data analysts at your company? You can kind of explain that you're trying to become a data analyst, so on and so forth. I think that is a lot less intimidating than posting on LinkedIn because it's one-on-one conversations with people you already know and people who already know you and like you and want to help you.
Yeah. And I love all of that. I like how your ask to your friends, it's not that big of an ask, right? Like you're not saying like, hey, can you get me a job interview tomorrow? You're more just like kind of doing a little research gathering on your own. I don't think anybody's going to get too offended. Like you're not asking them to put their neck out for you there. So yeah, it's really good advice. Yeah, for folks, I totally agree. I think LinkedIn is the place. Like one of the things that I tell people is like, you're not going to get hired without somebody looking you up on LinkedIn first at some point in the process, like every single time. You know, it might not be how they found you, but at some point it could be, or they also, you know, they're going to check you out at some point, and you got to look the part when you're there. And, you know, there's like the minimum baseline, like not looking like a jerk and, you know, looking like a data person. And then if you're posting things about your projects, like that can be some real momentum behind you. You know, somebody's interested in hiring you. I'm like, yeah, this Avery guy, man, he is passionate about this. Like I'm seeing projects up here. I want this guy on my team, you know? So yeah, I totally agree. And, but it is scary. It definitely was for me at first. Like we started doing it with Maven like 4 or 5 years ago. And I thought it was going to be this big, potentially embarrassing thing, or I'm putting myself out there and I'm nervous. And it's never really felt like that. You know, like people are really friendly in the data community. It's nobody talks trash to you or anything weird like that. Like it's a great place. So I love that advice to get active and would definitely recommend it. How about, so you talked about projects being so important, and I totally agree. Where should people look to get data sets for projects? Any particular places they could find them?
Yeah, this is something I really enjoy talking about. I recently just released a YouTube video with my 7 favorite places, so feel free to check that out. But I'll tell you them now, so you don't have to check it out. Kaggle's still like the go-to. I feel like it's like the best place. I feel like to get data sets. That's what I use the majority of the time. I have literally probably a list of like 100+ different places. And the majority of the time, Kaggle suits my needs. That being said, there's a bunch of other really fun resources. There's a subreddit called Datasets that has very interesting, unique data sets. There's a GitHub repository called Awesome Datasets that has some really cool data sets. And then of course, if you're into like different things. So for example, I'm really into sports. I did an internship with the Utah Jazz. If you want sports data, there's like these different websites. I don't know what the parent company is, but now I just forgot the name. Oh, there we go. Basketball Reference. There's Football Reference. There's Soccer Reference. They have tons of data sets there. Data World is another really good one that has a bunch of data sets there. The majority of the time, I think, you know, Kaggle can suit your needs, but if you want to get more niche or maybe like more up-to-date data sets, there are some other cool niche websites.
Yeah, the fun thing about like Kaggle or data.world, I mean, they have hundreds of thousands of data sets there. So if you want something about any particular industry, it's there. And they're pretty searchable and filterable too. You know, the UI for finding stuff is pretty good. So yeah, those are definitely my go-tos. So we could pivot into some of the audience questions if you're okay being on the hot seat, Avery. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it. Let me make my screen bigger so I can see them too.
Hey there, hope you're enjoying the video. Sorry to interrupt, we'll get you right back to it. Right now, Maven Analytics is offering a deal that was just too big not to share it with you. We've got an early Black Friday sale, and you can save up to 50% off of Maven Analytics paid plans. So if you've been considering learning Excel, SQL, Power BI, Python, Tableau, and everything else that you need to become a data analyst or accelerate your career, now is the perfect time. Check it out at mavenanalytics.io. You can see the Black Friday offer in the banner at the top of the screen. You can't miss it. Again, if you're on the fence, there's never been a better time. We don't do a lot of these sales, so I hope that some people will take advantage. Now, enjoy the video. I'll let you get back to it. Thanks. So this one's from Chenille. I've noticed that many data analyst roles I've applied for include a significant number of data science skills as well. So talking about that overlap that we talked about before, do you think the two roles are more similar in recent years, or do you think that's just like, what do you think is going on there?
Interesting. I don't know. That's really interesting. I don't really know if I 100% have seen the same thing. I like I said, I think that data roles a lot of the times are the titles are very interchangeable, and so sometimes, in fact, once upon a time, a CEO of a company reached out to me, and he wanted help creating his description. He was hiring someone in the data space, and I can't remember now. It's been so long. I can't remember if the title was data analyst and the whole description was data scientist, or if the title was data scientist and the whole description was data analyst. I can't remember which it was at this time, but it's like these people sometimes don't really know what they're necessarily wanting or what they're talking about. So I definitely think that there is a lot of overlap between the two roles. And I guess maybe the smarter thing to do is just kind of ignore the roles, and then you make the judgment call yourself on what the title is based off of what the job description is. If they're including Python and they mention machine learning, then I would probably gravitate towards it being more of a data scientist role. But like I said, I think it'll always be fuzzy. Yeah.
Sounds right to me. Great question. Here's another one. This one's from Christopher. So I guess Christopher asked ChatGPT. ChatGPT said the difference between predictive analytics and machine learning is that predictive analytics tends to focus on business data and machine learning is more research and development. What do you think about that?
This is I guess one of the reasons why I still have a job and ChatGPT can't replace me, because this is just, in my opinion, completely wrong. The way I think about it is predictive analytics is a rectangle, and machine learning is a square. So like all machine learning is predictive analytics, but not all predictive analytics is machine learning. It has nothing to do with what you're doing the analysis on. It just has to do what techniques you're using. So like I could argue that when you're doing something like time forecasting, that's predictive analytics. You're going to predict what's happening in the future. You could do that with something simple called like an ARIMA model. And I wouldn't really classify that as machine learning, but it would still be predictive analytics. And we could solve the same exact problem with something like linear regression, and linear regression technically is machine learning. Or we could do something like XGBoost or some other crazy machine learning, or like a neural net, and that would be technically machine learning as well. So definitely related, but I would be shy to say that it has anything to do with what you're doing the analysis on.
Yeah, that's not a great answer from ChatGPT. I'd definitely take Avery's answer all day. Awesome. Let's see. So this is from Nathaniel. Let's see. So there it is. Currently, I see a lot of recommendations for Excel, SQL, or Tableau, or another visualization tool. Any thoughts of going straight to Power BI, since it's kind of an all-in-one for my understanding? So like would you ever recommend somebody skips Excel and goes to Power BI? What do you think about that?
I think if you're in love with Power BI and you want to become a Power BI developer, more power to you. There'll be just, I mean, I think the fact that there's a Power BI developer, and that's actually like a common job title, that might be swaying you to be like, oh yeah, there's jobs that only use Power BI, but there's jobs that only use Excel. There's jobs that only use SQL. There's jobs that only use Tableau as well. So if you want to just focus on one of them, I think that's fine too. I think that's fine. I think you increase, I mean, it's really in the day, it's a trade-off between becoming a specialist and only being able to apply for a few jobs, but you're a specialist, or becoming a generalist and being able to apply for all the jobs, but so can all the other generalists. And I think I don't know if there's one that's better than the other. They're both good.
Yeah. Do you think, so I mentioned like learning Excel made SQL easier for me. Do you think knowing Excel really well, kind of as a data analyst, makes Tableau and Power BI easier too? Are there similar kind of like gains that you can get there?
I definitely think Excel to SQL. I think learning any data tool makes the next data tool easier to learn. In Power BI though, at least initially, you won't really be using formulas too much. You will eventually once you get to like intermediate and like advanced stuff. Then you'll start using things like DAX. I don't know about you, John, but I don't know if like DAX has ever been
touch
simple.
DAX personally. Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say, it's never been easy for me to learn DAX. So yeah, I don't know. I think learning any data tool makes the next one easier. I personally think like, if you look at like, just once again, to go back to the lowest hanging fruits analogy, like I'm telling you guys can learn Excel in like 2 weeks. Like it's not super hard. Power BI is not super hard either. It's drag and drop and clicks and kind of similar to like a PowerPoint. I think the UI is actually a lot easier than Tableau's UI as well. So anyways, I'm fine with you going straight to Power BI. That's fine. Especially if that's the world you want to be in.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's a good answer. Let's see what else we've got here. Trevonia asks this. I think you already covered it, but why Tableau over Power BI? I maybe somebody missed it.
Yeah, I do think that the Power BI is a lot more user-friendly than Tableau. But like I said, Tableau's asked for about 10% more on job applications. And it's also just easier to use. There's not like a Mac weird workaround that you have to do. And also, I don't even 100% know Power BI is like, Tableau's like, okay, here's Tableau public. It's free.
Yeah.
Power BI's free offering is so confusing to me because it's like, you can't like always use just like a Gmail account to get it. And anyway, so
yeah, you need
it's
business
confusing.
account. Yeah, school account. Yeah. Yep. Cool. Yeah. So I think you wouldn't be crazy to go Power BI if you were really excited about it, but yeah, some good reasons for Tableau. Another very similar question there. Let's see. How about this? So this one's from Abdurrahman. If we have the problem in grasping the syntax for languages like R, Python, SQL, but we still know about the implementation and the uses of these languages, would that work for an entry-level data scientist role, or do you kind of at least need to have the syntax so you can have your hands on the keyboard and do the work for one of them? What do you think?
That's an interesting question. John, by the way, I lost your video. I don't know if everyone else lost the video, but I still have your audio.
Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is really interesting. The entry-level data scientist conundrum. This is what I'll say is data science jobs are hard to get. There's still a lot of competition for them, and the barriers to entry are high. You have to know like, R, Python, and SQL or SQL, right? And those are all programming languages, and they're difficult to become proficient. It takes time. When you're applying for an entry-level data scientist role, they're looking for every reason to not hire you, or rather, there's just so much competition that like any, flaw or gaps can be really difficult. This is what I'll say. The majority of the time when you're going to be hired as a data scientist, an entry-level data scientist, you're probably going to have to do a coding test. In the coding test, you will probably have to, unfortunately, know the syntax, probably memorized with R, Python, or SQL. You'll probably get to choose, but I'm not a huge fan of coding tests, but they happen still all the time. And a lot of the times you can't use the things that you typically can, like Google and ChatGPT, which is one of the reasons I don't like them.
So weird. Yeah. So weird to me still. Yeah.
But that's the case. So you probably will have to know at least a little bit of the implementation and syntax. Now, the lucky thing is these coding tests, a lot of the times, are things you can study for. Like I said, I don't like them. I much rather have a take-home project, and I much rather give a take-home project as an employer. But that being said, they're still prevalent all over. So you probably will have to know at least a little bit of the syntax. Now, how much? Enough to pass the test is the answer.
Yep. I think that's great advice there. Here's another one from Ahmed. So you talked a little bit about R. You said you like R. Do you think R is really important? Is it indispensable? And I think maybe we're probably implying that the person maybe wants to be a data scientist, or could they get away with not learning R?
Oh, I think you can totally get away with not learning R at all. If you come from a computer science background, and R is not really a programming language if you have a computer science background. It's very easy, but it doesn't have like any of the actual programming. It doesn't have many of the programming stuff that like a computer scientist would really think about. But I don't think first off, I don't think any language, maybe other than SQL, is indispensable. I mean, heck, SQL's not indispensable because I started as a data scientist and I didn't use SQL at all in that role. So I think it's dangerous to say that any skill is indispensable. You have to know at least one skill, but it's not like if you don't learn SQL, you're never going to get hired. If you don't learn Tableau, you're never going to get hired. There's definitely roles that wouldn't use those. So if you want to skip R and you know Python already, then you're good. I wouldn't necessarily go and learn it. In fact, that's one of the other things is I think you should learn Tableau or Power BI. I think you should learn Python or R. I don't really think you should learn both. I think you can spend probably, I don't know, let's say 15 hours. Let's say you learn Python, spend 15 hours learning R, put it on your resume, call it good. You'll be able to figure it out later.
Yeah, cool. I love it. I think, and I especially love the pick Python or R. They sort of fulfill the same function a lot of the times. Same thing, pick Power BI or Tableau, most likely, maybe dabble in the other one. But become really strong in one of them, I think is great advice. Avery, this one's from me. I'm curious, can you tell our audience about Data Career Jumpstart? What's the program like? Where can they get more info? When's the next thing going live if you have kind of like a cohorted option?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I run a business called Data Career Jumpstart. Primarily what we do is we run a boot camp. It's called the Accelerator Program. It's a 10-week boot camp where basically we take you from zero to landing your first data job. So we do that by following the SPN method. So skills, portfolios, and networking. We take all three and kind of do it all together at the same time, where you'll be learning Excel, Tableau, SQL, Python, and R in that order, by building small little projects along the way and building your portfolio along the way. So by the end, you've learned all those skills. We just dabble in Python and R, just enough to put it on your resume. You've learned all those skills. You've built a project using each with real world data. And then you've also updated your LinkedIn, built your portfolio, updated your resume. You know how to reach out and network. One of the things we talk about is the phone book method that I talked about earlier. So basically you're 100% ready to start landing jobs at that point. So we're going to start a new cohort kind of on the December 1st area, but people can also join before then. We just launched a fall cohort not too long ago. We have a bunch of people in the program, so it's been a lot of fun, and I'd love to answer any questions. If you guys want to learn more, you guys can reach out to me on LinkedIn or just go to datacareerjumpstart.com and kind of find it there.
Very cool. Yeah, it sounds like an awesome program. I just dropped links again to Avery's LinkedIn and to the homepage for Data Career Jumpstart, and you've got that newsletter as well. I put the link in there too, so folks can get the newsletter. Another question, Avery, here. How about cloud platforms? Are cloud platforms important, like AWS, Azure? Is there one that you think is more important, if they're really important at all?
I think you can get paid to learn those the majority of the time, and unless this is what I'll say. And I mostly speak to like a North American audience, mostly Canada and the US. So if you're coming from other parts of the world, I can't speak as eloquently. This kind of goes for Europe as well. But unless you're making over the equivalent of $100,000, I would not touch. I wouldn't waste time learning a cloud platform. The reason being is cloud platforms, they're great. They're amazing to use. They're a little bit harder to learn. They're not in demand nearly as much as the other things we talked about earlier. I have data to back that up, at least for like a data scientist role. If you're touching cloud as a data analyst, don't do that. As a data scientist, maybe it's okay. But like I said, I usually think that those are going to be a little bit higher paying jobs. So if you're not making over 6 figures right now, I would get your foot in the door first before learning those cloud platforms. I never learned those cloud platforms on my own. I used them a little bit at the job, but I also worked at a big company where we had people that were like cloud specialists. So even as a data scientist and deploying on the cloud, I didn't do that. Someone else did that. Yeah. A different role. Not even the title data scientist did it. So my personal opinion is I wouldn't touch it. But if you're making like, let's say $120,000 already, then maybe it's a good idea because that might bump you up to 140 type of a thing.
Yeah, cool. I love it. I mean, I love that advice that keeps coming up from you is just get in the door and get paid to learn. You know, don't focus on building skills forever. Learn on somebody else's dime. Fantastic. Yeah, let's grab one more here from Christopher. So this is about, could you consider yourself a data scientist if you just learned these simple machine learning algorithms? And then they've actually got a bunch of machine learning algorithms in here. I think I know what your answer is going to be, but what do you say, Avery?
No, you can't consider yourself a data scientist if you only know. Of course you can. Here's one of my soliloquies I like to say. I think the hiring manager who rejects you the most is yourself. The recruiter who rejects you yourself is yourself.
Yeah.
Here's the thing at the end of the day. You should, instead of calling yourself an aspiring data scientist, just say you're a data scientist. Instead of saying you're an aspiring data analyst, just say you're a data analyst. Because the definition of a data scientist, in my opinion, would be someone who does something like machine learning. So if you've done any form of machine learning, welcome to the club. You're a data scientist. If you've done any form of data analysis, welcome to the club. High five. You're officially welcome to the data analyst club. We'll send you your badge and your swag bag soon. And also, I don't even think these are the simpler machine learning algorithms, but there's nothing simple about them. They're like, if you know how to do those things, good job. To be honest, looking at this list, there's like, the text is a little small for me, but even all that stuff there, I don't know how much more I use than that at the job. Because here's the truth. Everything you do at the job is easier than you do in the interviews and in your upskilling. The job's usually pretty simple a lot of the time. So.
Awesome. I love it. Avery, this was so good. Any final, if you could give one piece of advice to somebody who's trying to become a data analyst, what do you think you would tell them?
SPN, baby. Just remember, it's not just about the skills. You got to build the projects in the network. That's the simplest thing, I think.
Awesome. Hey there. I hope you enjoyed this video. This was part of our open campus event where we ran 24 sessions in front of a live audience over the course of 2 weeks. It was a ton of fun. We did all these live sessions and we opened up our entire learning platform for free. You did not need a paid account to take advantage of all the courses. So folks could learn Excel, SQL, Power BI, Tableau, Python, etc. All the stuff that you need to learn data analysis skills and take your career to the next level. If you missed it this year, keep an eye out. We'll definitely be doing this again next year, probably again in October. We would love to see you there. And the last thing that I'll leave you with, if you're looking to take your skills to the next level right now, and you've been on the fence about a Maven Analytics paid plan, we are currently running our early Black Friday sale. This is the absolute best time to pay for Maven Analytics if you want to, so don't miss out. You'll have the opportunity to save up to 50% on paid plans, which is a pretty great opportunity. You can check out all the details at mavenanalytics.io. Just look for the early Black Friday banner at the top of the site. You can't miss it. Hope that we'll see some of you there as well. Thanks for watching.